Hello, my name is Paul Geelen. I'm an ocularist from Western Australia and I consult at Moorfields Eye Hospital in Dubai. This is the second talk in a series around the mind map, adjusting and adapting to eye loss. So last time we talked about the operation. After the operation there's a 6 to 8 week period while the eye socket is healing, and then we start to make the artificial eye. But before we go into making the artificial eye, from the last talk I mentioned that there is a clear plastic lens fitted into the eye socket during the surgery. Something we do here in our practice is when a patient comes in prior to the operation, we will paint up the conformer shell. So it's actually an artificial eye that will be fitted during the surgery. So after the surgery there will be a pressure bandage over the eye for 4 days. This prevents the swelling and helps with the healing. After this, when the patch comes off, there's already an artificial eye in position. This is worn for 6 to 8 weeks, and in this period it will look a bit small. The eyelids will be a little bit closed over the front because it's quite thin. But this is just something to help people get through the 6 to 8 week period until the proper one can be made. And during this period people can go back to work. Normally it would be a couple of weeks, and certainly you don't want to be doing physical labour, but for most people they're able to return to work after maybe a couple of weeks. So 8 weeks later you come back. There are 5 visits to make an artificial eye. So if you have a look at the mind map, you can see in the first visit we take an impression of the eye socket. On the second visit we'll have made this up into a wax model or a plastic model, and we'll work on the shape. On the third visit we're going to paint it. It's all hand painted while you're here. We can do it from photographs, but we would prefer to paint it while you're here so that we can get a proper copy of your eye rather than getting a copy of a copy. So the definition and it won't be as good if we do it from photographs, we feel. The fourth visit, it's ready to try in. And we say 5 visits because more often than not there's a small adjustment. There's so many small things involved in making the artificial eye that often we may have to touch up the paint or make it a little bit bigger. So we say 5 visits to make the artificial eye. After this, about a week later, we'll get you back again just to make sure everything's settled in and is looking good, and make sure that you're comfortable with the eye. So I'm going to go through the details of those 5 steps in a bit more detail. So in the first visit, when we take the impression of the eye socket, we want to know what the shape at the back is with the ball over the eye. So we start off with an impression tray, which is like a clear conformer shell with lots of holes in it. This is positioned into the eye socket, so we find something that's about the right size. Then I'll mix up some paste. This is impression paste, and I'll put that into the back of the shell and it's fitted into the eye socket. When this is done, this will set. It takes about 1 minute. It's a little bit cold, it's a little bit yuck, but it's not painful. Nothing that we do is painful, but it does feel, it's a very unusual sensation, something you'll have never experienced before. But it only takes 1 minute, and we have a copy of the shape of your eye. In the second visit, we want to make this up into plastic or wax, as I said, and we want to make sure that the eye is fitting firmly into the socket. So we're looking at retention of the eye. We want to make sure that if you're rubbing the eye, it's not going to fall out or turn around. So we need to make sure it fits firmly into the socket. We want to make sure that the eye is opening properly, so by positioning the iris further forward we can get the lids to open up, because the lids actually sit over the prosthesis, and that's what sit over the eye, and when you bring the prosthesis forward it will open the eye a bit. If I sink it back I can close it. So we want to get that line of the lids looking right for your eye, and we want to get the position of the iris right. So we start off with a blank shape and then we'll position an iris button into that shape, and we make sure that that's looking straight. It's got a little stick on the front. It feels a bit unusual during this fitting, but again, not painful, just a little bit unusual. But primarily we want to make sure it's comfortable. So we want to make sure there's no pressure in the eye and that you're able to wear it. It'll feel a bit unusual and scratchy, but we want to make sure there's no pressure. On the third visit, it's all hand painted. So we've made it up into a white plastic, and we cut down into the front of that so we can expose the sclera and open up the iris. The iris is embedded in that white plastic, and then it's hand painted. We make our paints with dry pigments and we mix it with moly poly, which is the material that we have in the artificial eye. So what we want to have is we've got a clear layer over the top made from plastic, and the white at the base is made from plastic, and the paint in between is made from the same material. People use different paints. I used to use Liquitex acrylics. A lot of people use oil paints. I just like the idea of having one material all the way through so that it all bonds and seals properly, and then you're not going to have problems with separation of the plastics and problems down the track. So it's all hand painted. The veins, we cheat a little bit. We use red cotton. We shred that and glue it into position, and it gives a very realistic effect of the little veins in the eye. And the pupil is a black dot that's stuck in the middle, and we determine the size of the pupil for a person's lifestyle. So if you spend a lot of time outdoors, or you're very much a daytime type of person, we'll use a smaller pupil. But people who have an active nightlife or spend a lot of time indoors or want to have something which is more natural for indoor light, will go with something that's slightly larger pupil. Once it's painted, we dry the paints, and then we cure plastic across the front of it, a clear plastic which has a cornea across the front, and this will bring out the colours and give it life. This is cured overnight, and on the 4th day it's polished. Polishing is very important to get that high shine, make sure there's no scratches on the artificial eye, make sure it's comfortable, and it's ready to try. It's a very exciting day, and this is when the patient will have the opportunity to look in the mirror and see the eye looking back at them. As I said, there might be adjustments, and we'll get you back for a 5th visit, generally the next day, just to make sure everything's okay. And then we will also teach a patient how to remove the eye for cleaning and to put it back again, and also how we clean an artificial eye. But this is the subject of my next talk. Thank you very much for watching.